Welcome back to the Authenticity Calling podcast. I'm your host, Relitza Spasova, and I am so happy to be joined today by a new friend that I met on LinkedIn, Athin Cassiotis. Athin Cassiotis. I messed it up. Welcome to the Authenticity Calling podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Relitza. It's all good. It's like Nathan without the N, Athin. It's a little bit different, just like you've got a unique name. But yeah, awesome to be here and look forward to having a chat and seeing where it leads.
That's right. And you just told me to, and I still flopped it. And that's okay. It's been one of those days that we just roll with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so great to connect with you. And Athin, you are a business growth expert. What does that mean?
What does that mean? Well, I've, helped people grow their businesses basically, right? And, I've got a lot of interesting things that come up. Like I also do, I'm an investor, I'm an international speaker, a coach, mentor, consultant, and I'm also the host of my own podcast, The Business Growth Show. So I've, over 200 episodes over 4 years and interview a lot of people in a whole range of areas and done an MBA, a Master of Business Administration, as well as on the mindset side, being an NLP master practitioner. So I basically encompass all of these areas of growing your business to, help you to take it to where you want to be and create that success, wealth and freedom. And that's basically, what I do, using all of those different areas and being like the GP, the general practitioner doctor, where you go there and they sort of understand everything and they go, okay, what's the area that we need to focus on more of? And then, do we need to bring some specialists in, as well, like that.
Amazing, amazing. So from doctor to business doctor, let's have this conversation. I'm so curious. So you said something, NLP. NLP stands out to me. I have this judgment around NLP and hypnotherapy and all the things. So I'm diving deep into learning more about them. I find it manipulative and I don't like it. It really messes with my integrity. And so I'm just curious, what's your perspective around NLP and what's the gift of it? And is there sort of, a warning sign that it comes with?
Yeah, great question. And so NLP, I've done the practitioner training as well as the master practitioner, right? So I'm a master practitioner of NLP. So the practitioner, as well as like timeline therapy and things, I guess it's sort of 7 days, then about 12 days, right? For the masters. So there's a lot that goes into them. Now, the way I would say NLP is, it's like a understanding of how we work as humans, and it goes really deep. And there's a lot of tools that it gives you on how to change someone for the better. Now, the way I like to think of anything, right, is like, let's think of like a hammer. You give a hammer to a builder and they can build a lot of things. They can build a house, they can do a lot of stuff. But, there might be a very, very small percentage of people that might use a hammer to hurt people, right? So, the choice is really in the beholder and having, integrity and using the tool for what it's meant to be used for, not for what it's not meant to be used for. So I think there's always going to be some people out there that might say, oh, how can I manipulate like your words or other things like that? But that's not necessarily what it's used for, because NLP is always to have ecology, which means it's always best for the person, for the environment, for the world, everything like that of what you're doing it for. That's the intention. Now, yes, there's some areas of influence that you can do in there, but there's a lot of other cool things of understanding. Like there's one cool tool as an example is called a like to dislike. So, my mother-in-law was here. She's from interstate. She was staying with us, and she was eating a lot of bread and butter. And she was like, I don't know why I do it. And she was remembering like this, this memory from younger where she see people do it. She'd eat it every day. She'd eat like 4 slices of this, right, with heaps of butter. And, it's one of those things like you don't know why you're eating something bad. It could be chocolate. It could be whatever, right? And I said, well, there's a tool with NLP that I've learned that I can change that like into a dislike and mirror that up to something. She hated okra, right? I don't know if you know what okra is, but a weird vegetable, right? And so there's a tool, and I literally made her, in a very simple process, like sort of transfer that. So now she thinks of it like okra. And, she hated it after. She didn't feel like it after I did this tool, right? Which is a pretty powerful tool, because then that affects, your health. It affects a lot of other things in your life there. So that's one, cool tool that's there. And I think the I think the biggest overall area, because you don't always bring these tools out, all the time, but it's just more understanding how to coach people. So if you're a
Mhm.
coach, I think it's really great because as a coach, you need to be able to listen, right, a lot and hear limiting beliefs and understand what are the types of questions that I can ask
Mm,
that allows me to get to the root problem of what this person is that they're probably not aware of,
mhm,
and allow them to shift that change and
mhm.
then create, actions going forward from there. So I think that it gives you a good baseline of how to do that. And that's
Yeah.
probably the standard of what people do. But there's a lot of breakthroughs, a lot of other cool tools that happen. So that's the very simple sense. Hopefully that makes you feel a little bit better about the potential, of NLP.
Well, no, I really appreciate that example that you used too. And I guess naturally what comes to mind is, and I know some people are going to be thinking this, is okay, well then couldn't you convince her to give you all her money? And couldn't you convince her to, like use these tools to manipulate in not a good way? And I already know the answer because I've done my research with hypnotherapy a little bit, but I'm going to pass it back to you and just hear your explanation because I mean, this is the first time we're talking, and I would love to hear, as someone who's a practitioner who's specialized in this, what would be your response to someone's concern that's that?
Yeah, like, you could potentially, but manipulation is, you know, there's levels of manipulation, right? Forcing someone to do something or leading someone. I think, sales overall, if I step back, you need to be able to influence and persuade someone, right? So let's think about it from a young age. If you're as a child, right, and you're out at the park or somewhere else and you see an ice cream truck, you're going to be like, I want the ice cream. I need the ice. You're going to do everything in your possible power to get that ice cream, right? And then eventually, you go in, or even a simple sense. Let's say you're going out, want to go out for dinner with a partner or your family, and you both want different cuisines. One of you has got to influence the other person to go to the one that you want, right? So it's part of our life, influencing, right? Which, it's not manipulation, so to speak. So I think there's, manipulation is really doing something they don't want to do. I think influence is more like, hey, this is a really cool thing. I think you should, look into this and give some reasons why. And then sort of they convince themselves. You're not really forcing someone, right? I think influencing is more that way. And that's the way that I would see, NLP being, right? Is that how can I use certain things to get people to take action? Because a lot of the time people are stuck. Like what NLP teaches us is that 95% of our thoughts are the same thoughts as yesterday. So if that's the case, we're just relaying the same things over and over again. So we're not realizing that it's our unconscious mind that's doing most of this, right? So our conscious mind is very small. I think it's like 200 bits a second compared to millions of bits, a second in our unconscious mind. So when you understand that, it's like, how do we dig into those patterns, those behaviors, those habits, and actually change them, right? This is where influence is powerful. And, in the way that NLP is there. And sometimes the person is not aware that that these are happening, or they're not aware that they, want to change. Then you realize and say, hey, this is a good way to change, influence them to change. And then something really powerful can happen from there. So sometimes you have to suggest, obviously, you got to lead them down a path. Like I haven't done much hypnotherapy. Hypnotherapy is like an addition to NLP. I haven't done much of that. That's obviously putting someone into that state. But if you understand brain waves, then you've got the beta brainwave, which is normally what we're using now. Then you have alpha, which is like the meditation brainwave. That's a little bit more deeper hertz. And then you've got like theta level. And theta is where a lot of change happens. You've got delta, which is deep sleep as well. But the theta, if you can get to that stage, that's where you can really make, influence people, but in a very good way, right? In that way there. And sometimes, you can go down the hypnotherapy path, like you mentioned. Like you could be trying it consciously to do it unconsciously, but sometimes it might be hard for the person. So sometimes you may need to go into that trance to get into that lower state, like a hypnotherapy state, to get to that root cause and change it in someone, right? But everyone has to agree normally. Normally there's a consent at the start of that. It's saying, hey, do you want to do this, right? At the start of the session, and they agree, because I think the energy is there. I think if people, if they're in a sales element and they're really trying to manipulate someone, the old car salesman or something like that, I think that comes back to them, right? Whether it's karma or other things, that area there, if they use it to try and do those areas. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth, and it's being open to that, and trusting the person that, use your gut, your intuition, your instincts, whatever it is, that this is the right person that's going to do right by me. And they're going to help me to, to do what I need to do. Yeah. But I'd love to hear your thoughts as well on what you've been looking. I know you've been looking into all this stuff as well. So I'd love to, hear it from your perspective too.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because so one thing that you said really stood out to me and I think would land on the side of the client who would be receiving this, just to be open to it, is, a lot of people are stuck. And unless we take them to that space where the way that I learned it, I took a business course just after my certification, and it really rubbed me the wrong way because it was used in a way to create the need. It's like, hey, Athin, come to my free webinar. And, don't bring anything, you're good. And then I'm going to tell you, okay, now take notes. And then, I don't have paper. And I'm going to sell you $1,000 pen now because you need to take notes, but you don't have a pen. You didn't bring anything. And so it's that style of sort of, highlight what your goals are, what's missing for you, all the ways you haven't been able to get there on your own. And then it's sort of like this dangling the carrot, right? Getting them into that emotional state, feeling like they're helpless and without you, they can't proceed. And I think that's what makes me nervous and a little bit concerned about the way that it is being used in business nowadays. And I didn't love that way. And I thought it was like, it's greasy, it's gross. I had so much resistance around, using it around sales at all in that point in my career. And so I think you're right. It really depends how it's used. But what I was referring to in hypnotherapy is exactly what you said about, you actually cannot make the person do something that's out of integrity for them, something that they would not naturally do in their awakened state. So with that full permission going in, and I think informed consent, and obviously, describing and them leading with their desires and what their outcomes are and their goals are. I think that to me is, of course, in integrity. And as you said, it's a tool to support people to make those positive changes in their life. So I think that is absolutely beautiful. And
yeah.
No,
I love it. So true. And what you've got to understand is that some people are pain focused or pleasure focused, but I think it's 80% of people roughly are more influenced by pain, right? And 20% by pleasure. And this is why people go down that path, right, of understanding that about people, because sometimes if they don't feel enough pain, then they're not going to move forward. So sometimes you have to make them feel a bit of pain because maybe they're just comfortable right now and they're like, oh, it's okay. Do I need to change? But they're not getting where they want to be, right? So sometimes you have to get
suffering.
You understand, right? So sometimes you have to put them through a little bit of pain going, wow, do I really want to stay like this for the next 5 years and not be where I want to be and enjoy myself? Or do I need to be here? And obviously, depending on what you offer, ideally it's something that's going to be for them, not just you're selling $1,000 pen, right? It's selling something that's going to help them and give them take them through a process to get a result in whatever that is. I think that's really key. And and obviously there's pain and pleasure. There's a lot of different elements there. But I liked what you shared. It's got to be for the person. And if I talk about it in business, I can teach, like I've got an MBA, I teach a lot of strategies and tactics in all these areas of business, but I could teach it to 10 different people and get 10 different results. And that's because of their mindset. Because we've all got different limiting beliefs growing up. And we've got to change those. And our parents probably just weren't aware. I think nowadays, there's a lot more awareness on this. So the next generation, I think, if they've got parents that are aware like this, are going to be, almost like super kids, right? And super people, because they don't have as much of this baggage that their parents are just doing what their parents did before. It's like, no, we don't have to think these bad money beliefs or whatever it is, right, that people are holding on to. So I think that, and I had a new client. I have people who help startups all the way to 8-figure businesses. And he's a 7-figure business. He had like 15 staff initially, went down to 5 staff, was in a bad rut. And he found me online and said, Athin, I want to work with you. And I had an initial chat with him and I said, okay, the first session is going to be a mindset session because I can tell this is the problem. I did one mindset session and he had his biggest month ever in his business the month after. No
Wow.
strategies, no tactics whatsoever, right? So I created the breakthrough that was there. So sometimes it's just a little cog like that, something that just needs to shift. And then all of a sudden, your awareness and what you focus on, is going towards, and you're attracting, what you want instead of what you don't want. Because a lot of people focus on what they don't want. So, and then we, did the strategies, and, you said that was worth the whole coaching for the year with me, right? That one session, so that's how powerful we can be. So that's where, in business, but in life, it's the combination, right? But I think the mindset is the most important, because that's the key differentiator between everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think in business, it makes it a little bit more tangible, especially when you can see the return on investment. You can, maybe you don't promise a return on investment of a specific percentage, or, you're going to make 10 times the amount you invest, but there's something to say about that in business where it is tangible and the turnaround is financial, which is what most people see when it comes to coaching and investing in themselves. All they see is the money. It's so strange. We're so coded to think about money as this sort of, just our codependency with money and the way that we actually can receive support. If it's a low ticket offer, people won't put the time and energy into it. It's not the same as, a mid ticket or high ticket offer. So it's really interesting actually how much that energetic exchange and how much our money stories are rooted to our capacity to even evolve and succeed. I think that's really interesting in business, that if you are a business coach, people are so much more willing to invest. They don't see as much, I think, the benefit of transforming their life when it comes to things outside of business, because they might have a goal around, the relationships, for example, or their wellness, their holistic health, right? They might have goals around, their career, but unless it's easily quantifiable, I think it's a lot harder for people to just say, take that leap of faith. So yeah, I really see that. And I'm curious what your perspective is as a business growth coach for people who, like me, don't necessarily coach on business and that return of investment financially, but that return on your time and energy. And to me, really, the way that I work is I support people in connecting with their intuition and really getting into that sort of that flow state, balancing really the masculine structure and doing and scheduling and all of those things that our world is so hyper masculine in the energy right now, and balancing that with more of that, let's let go of the strategy a little bit and let's see what feels right, and kind of trusting that intuition and going with that flow state and really diving into different ways of getting to know themselves better and what works for them, rather than teaching necessarily someone else's strategy and applying someone else's strategy. Because I know spiritually, and I know that everyone functions like this, but not everyone does, that if you try to follow someone else's strategy, it's unless it's exactly your strategy too, intuitively, then it's not going to work the same. And so I think business coaching is so important, because you're asking them what works for them and creating, co-creating a model that actually comes from them, instead of just selling a strategy, which a lot of people will buy someone else's strategy and then wonder, well, why doesn't this work? And so I guess my question to you is, as a business growth coach and as someone who's, I don't love sales, right? What would be, what comes to mind for you, I guess, hearing that?
Yeah, so there's a few cool questions in there that I'll aim to answer as well as possible. So with sales, so I'll just jump on that one first, right? Where you're saying you hate sales. I think there needs to be a little bit of a reframe with, like sales is just more like serving, right? Like, how am I serving this other person in the best possible way? And you're just having a conversation, you're understanding what's going on for them right now, what challenges are they having, and then can your products and services, whether that's something that's already bundled or something that you tailor, can help them to get to where they want to be. Now, obviously, from a less structured, or business coaching has a more of a direct ROI, like you said. If you're doing something that's a little bit like what you're talking about, not as tangible, you have to think about, number one, like, what are the benefits, obviously, like in this process that they're going to go through, but what's something like the end result, right? So once you have this amazing intuition, you're in touch with your energies, like what is that going to give you? So, and this is where you have to understand their goals. So when you're understanding what their goals are, it's like, well, what do you actually want to achieve in the next, 1 year, 5 years, or whatever? It's like, okay, well, then you've got to understand where these pain points are, and you can link what you do to that. Now, there may not be a direct ROI, but you can say, well, if you want to, get, if it's someone that's not in business, right? Like if you want to help someone to get that bigger promotion, right? Or you want to do something big in their life, you want to find a partner. It's like, well, this intuition, this understanding yourself is going to help you be a better person, which will attract them to do that. So it's just through that serving process, those questions, you then link it to what it is, because you know that it does directly affect, right, these things. And I think intuition is so important. If I'll give a quick, little story. I'm very in touch with my intuition, and I think that's something that we all have to understand and probably learn from yourself on how to do that. This is over many years, right? Of everyone gets it different ways of how they get their messages, but it's that feeling potentially, right, of going, yeah, this feels right for me, right, in that moment, or what I should be doing or not doing. And a lot of good things have come from that. And I think when you love yourself, right, a lot of stuff with coaching about people is they don't feel loved and they don't feel good enough. That's really the bottom two things for most people.
Right. Worth. Yeah.
Yeah. So self-worth, and not feeling loved because of their parents, because of all these things, right? So that's really most of the bottom beliefs around things. So when you understand that, obviously, how you work on your self-worth, excuse me, but also from feeling love. Now, obviously you can have love from external people, but the most important thing is loving yourself, because when you love yourself, you attract more of others, whether it's a relationship or just generally, people will feel, your heart and want to connect with you, right? On an energetic level, going, wow, there's something about Athin, something about Relitza that is really cool. I love speaking to them, and relationships build from there. And whether it's business, life, anything, I think is really important. And, so that would be, some things there. I've got some cool stories in other areas about that. But it's, it's very interesting on intuition. So the key thing is understand where they want to go and all their challenges and their goals, whether that's short-term, medium-term, long-term goals and their challenges, and then linking what you do, even if it's intangible, that to the ones that it can directly affect. And ideally, if you've already been working with clients before, you can still do that from the start. Then you can, obviously give examples saying, well, when I worked on this is what they created, or this is what led them to these other results, right? From there, later down the track, which helps then, to, even if it's not exactly the same, it's still examples of people going, wow, when I work on it and I'm being good, this is what people will get from it as well.
Beautiful. Thank you for that explanation. And it's really, that's ingrained, but to hear it again from the business perspective, and to hear it's something that keeps cycling in my mind. And I'm very much I'm a generator on the human design. So for me, my energy comes from my inspiration, and when I use that to connect with people, like I've tried hiring and using the exact strategy that you've said, and the messaging and having someone else support me and do it for me, but when it doesn't come from me, that same energy is not behind it. So it just doesn't work. So I think hiring out is another piece. It's like when you hire someone to do the work for you, even if it is in your voice, your way, it's really challenging, even if you have the right words and, like speak to the right, have the right message. I think energy is so important too. And what you said about loving yourself and attracting people because they want to be in that energy. When you love yourself, when that metaphorical cup that we fill, people do feel that energy. And so I think, I think the best business card to a strategy is the energy of the person themselves. So yeah, that's beautiful. That's a great reminder. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I know human design quite well. I'm a projector myself. So I wait for the invitation, right? So it's a different strategy to a generator. You've got a lot more energy. You wake up. Whereas me, my energy is different, right? So this is where, a lot of people don't know that I know a lot about human design. But I'm quite well versed. I'm sure you love this conversation. But whether you're a projector or manifester, this is where people can get quite sick later on in life, because our energy, if we push ourselves too much, like that, that culture of, oh, you got to work hard and hustle and all of that in business. When you're younger, you can sort of get, do it. But as you start to get to like your 40s and 50s and everything like that, this is where a lot of people get sick, because we're not built like that. Our battery has to be replenished, and we should be working less time in a day, be more strategic, and getting people on board, right? That are going to help us. And this is like what you talked about, team there, right? We can't do everything ourselves, and we're not the best at everything. Ideally, we know a decent amount about most things, so we can understand it enough so that when we delegate or partner with someone, we can still ask the right questions, that we're getting the right people in. We don't have to be a master at all of them. So I think it's important to know, how to get people to do the right things. What's your superpower? What are you really good at? Stay in your zone of genius there. And then, get other people to help us, whether they're working for us, whether they're contractors, partners together, other areas there is really important. And yeah, from a human design perspective, I know if you're obviously talking about intuition, there's different ways that people have intuition, right? As well, and how people make decisions, which is very interesting. I'll give a little story about my wife, right? So my wife's a projector as well, but the difference between us is our decision making. So I'm an instincts person, right? So my things come to me instantly, and I know what I want to do. Whereas my wife is more of that gut feeling, needs to feel into it, right? In that area there, and potentially sometimes get some external, confirmation with that too. So if I'm like, hey, this feels right, yeah, let's do this, I can't just expect my wife to just say, yeah, Ethan, yeah, let's do it. I need to give her time, right?
Yes.
So it's so important, because then from a relationship, or when you understand team members in a business, whatever it is like that, then you're like, okay, everyone's different. And it's that rule, right? A lot of people used to say, treat people how you want to be treated, but it's actually treat people how they want to be treated.
Exactly.
Right?
I see that all the time. I love that. We're so on the same page with that. And what you said, sorry to interrupt, but about energy and your wife, and even in teams, and knowing all of that. I use the Enneagram with teams. I use, different tools to better understand one another. And so I'm curious, do you use human design in your coaching? What other tools do you use for that?
Yeah, like I have used it to some extent. I use it a little bit more with my team, especially I do it with, because I want to know how they work with. Depending on the person, if I need to, yes, I can do with human design. But yes, I use simpler stuff, and then I go deeper depending on the person. So for example, for like the personality side of things, like you talk about Enneagram, I start with a disc profile, because it's a little bit more simpler for people to deal with, the 4 different sort of personality types. And then depending on the person, and how open they are to delving deeper, if they want to learn more, right? Because it's that curiosity mindset, then we can, delve into these other areas. My wife's more of a master in the Enneagram, more than what I am. So I know a little bit about it, me being the achiever in that, and and then my wife having those other areas. So, but not as well versed. But yes, I think we all have tools, right? Whether it's like NLP before, whether it's human design, Enneagram, all these other tools that we do. And then it's as the coach, or as the person that's helping that person, it's like, okay, what tool is going to be right? Using intuition, like you mentioned, going, okay, this is feeling, I think, right for you right now, that we need to delve into, that's going to get you where you need to be there. And I think once you have that awareness, and you can tap into that, then that's when it becomes really powerful. Because like you said, not everything's going to work exactly the same for every person. So you got to work out, trust yourself, and trust the messages you're getting, going, yes, we need to focus on this now. And then that's how you get really great results, and everybody wins there as well.
Yeah, I love what you said about trusting the messages. It's like some of that esoteric, when you say it, I think it doesn't land for everyone. But that's a beautiful point. And yeah, I go into a lot of that in I just co-authored a book. I've got a chapter, and it's really about, that sovereignty and trusting ourselves, but also recognizing that it doesn't just stay within ourselves. It's like you'll get all the different messages from the universe if you just are present to it and if you pay attention. And so I think that's really important to remember, that when we are in that alignment and when we are in that state of really knowing ourselves and being able to speak our truth, but walk in our truth, be in our truth, feeling our intuition, whether that lands as a voice, whether that lands as an inner knowing, a gut feeling, whatever that is. But it becomes so much easier to discern. And I think that's really the important piece, is like pulling away all the things that are not in alignment, which a lot of that does require, the slowing down, the taking the time to contemplate, asking ourselves. And then I think something you said earlier in the beginning about parents, it's like we can live the algorithm that our parents lived. And I think a lot of people don't even recognize. I'm going through my own sort of like, drama with my family right now, and just really recognizing when I'm not in their circle, when I'm not in their space, it is so much easier for me to just do my own thing, but when they're around, it's like you automatically fall into this younger version of yourself. It's like that energetic pattern of being their child takes over, and you almost feel stuck and helpless, until you remove yourself. It's like Velcro. You have to just, and get yourself out of that sort of energetic sort of whirlwind of the old family system, just to be able to have that sort of space and peace and sovereignty in your energetic field. I think we don't talk enough, I think, about energy. We're so as humans, I think we're just so focused on the tangible things that we can see, feel, and appreciate in our bank account or in our physical world. But energy is so important and powerful too. And so, yeah, I wonder if you talk about that at all in your business coaching. And then I want to ask you about how you got here, how you got to doing this. Like what was your synchronistic journey to doing this work?
Yeah, definitely. I'll touch on both. So what I talk about, which is linked to all of that, is more around quantum physics, right? So I think this is, very deep. I love it. It can go, I'll keep it high level here today, because you can go down this deep rabbit hole and people's minds get blown. But I think it's really important to understand quantum physics, because the old Newtonian way of physics, the cause and effect way of things, you throw a stone and it falls and everything like that, is still valid. But there's this other quantum world that is actually what is changing everything around us, right? And there's the double slit experiment, which you probably know about, right? Where they were shooting these, photons, these atoms through there. And when they were looking at it, they were going a particular way. Then they didn't look at them and they were shooting them. And then they went back after and they saw that they went in completely random ways. So what that means is that our observation of something changes the world around us. Just like our table, whatever we have, is vibrating right now. It's atoms vibrating, but it looks solid, right, to us right now. So understanding that, and there's all this matter that's in between things with quantum physics. So getting people to understand that. And I think the easiest way as well, like there's things with string theory or like understanding with intention, right? I think that's the easiest way for people to understand quantum physics. So when you put an intention out there, it's like going out into the universe, right? Or whatever word you want to use. And then you can attract that. Now, there's a lot of ways that could stop that attraction, but there's a lot of ways that you can help that attraction as well. It's just like, I'm sure everybody, yourself or so many other people, have you ever like thought about someone and then they called you like soon after that,
All
right?
the time, yeah.
All the time, right?
Yeah.
At least once, if not countless times, right? That happens. And, so because there's that connection, right? It's like, either one person's thinking of the other person, you get the message, and they could be far away, right? And it's, my wife, a couple of cool stories, is that I was early on in the relationship, very connected. And I was making my healthy protein balls with like peppermint essential oil, right? That was the thing, to make them peppermint. And she calls me, she's like, hey, got this weird taste of peppermint in my mouth. I don't know what it is. And she's like, and I'm like, I just ate my peppermint bowl just then. So she could actually taste that, right? So it's not even the call and the thinking, it's actually, you know, these other areas of what you can be connected to other people around you. So when you understand that intention that you put out there, that you can attract that, it becomes really powerful, you know, in terms of what you do. And I think, you know, from a business or life sense, it's being really specific on that intention is really important. And I'll do a very quick story of my wife, where how we met. And I know you'll love this story. Most people will. I'll do the very short version of it because we don't have huge amounts of time. Is that, you know, my wife, we, one of our friends from, we both grew up in Adelaide, funnily enough, but, you know, which is a smaller capital city in Australia. We're both in Sydney now. One of our friends we knew, you know, separately, was coming from Adelaide to Sydney to do a group meditation type of event, right? And we go there. I notice her on the outside. As we're walking in, she says, I want you to say your name, whisper to me your name and the trait you're going to bring to the group, whether it's love, compassion, whatever. Right. And I just did some personal development, right? You know, worked on my mindset just before. So I was feeling very, very confident. So I said Athin and I said confidence. Now there's 50 of us. We all go in the room in 2 groups. We're on yoga mats. And by chance, I'm next to, you know, Irene there on the yoga mat. Now we're doing different exercises. We're not speaking, like learning about chakras and all these other things. Right. And then later down, we go through a guided meditation and she goes to everyone, I want you to think about the biggest thing holding you back, like your biggest limiting belief. I had to rack my brain for a little bit because I just did that, you know, just before this. So I had to go a little bit deeper. And then I thought to myself, I've always made an excuse about a girlfriend. So I was single for 10 years. I had some girlfriends when I was quite young. I was single for 10 years because, yeah, for various reasons, I made excuses. I'm going overseas here. I want to be single. I'm got my business. I'm too busy, all these things, right? So then I thought to myself, well, she goes, I want you to flip it like you've got it in the best possible way. I'm like, okay, well, what's my perfect woman? And I went really deep and I said, like, you know, business-minded, spiritual, European background, Greek if possible, to have a similar culture, you know, similar movies, humor, all of that type of stuff. And I went really specific. I was like 30 to 50 things, extremely, extremely specific. Then we finish the event. No one's talked yet. We all get in a circle. And she says, everyone, I want you to say the name and the trait. You know, we'll just go around the circle. She's next to me. She says, Irene. And she says, confidence. And I just chuckled, right? She was the only other person. No one else had said it. We're near the end of the line, right? And then I'm about to say the same word. I say Athin confidence. She looks at me all weird. And then, you know, it finishes. And then my intuition is like, there's something here, right? You know, that I need to say hello. I go, hey, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think we should have a chat. And she's like, you know, here's this weird guy trying to chat with me. Anyway, we start talking and she's like, oh, what do you do? I got my, you know, consulting business. You know, I've got my brand, you know, design business. So I'm like tick for business, tick for spiritual in my head, you know, at this type of event. And then she goes, oh, what's your background? I said, I'm full Greek. She goes, I'm half Greek, half Italian. I'm like, there's the tick there. And then she goes, do you know where your t-shirt's from? I said, yes, do you? I had a Cobra Kai t-shirt on. And she goes, yeah, I watched Karate Kid, the movie last night. And you're wearing the t-shirt from that movie. So there's a similar movies. Then we started talking about The Simpsons. We did about 20 lines back and forth. And literally everything I asked for, I manifested instantly, right? At that event for my perfect woman. And we even grew up in the same city where most of our family is, which makes Christmas time, you know, very easy to go back there. Now that's more of a freak thing where you can attract it instantly when you ask for something. But, you know, from a quantum perspective, if you're really aligned, you can attract things instantly. But sometimes it might take some time, having really good intention, putting it out there. And then when it is the right time, believing that it will show up. So that's a couple of cool stories. And hopefully that helps people to understand about the intention. I could go into obviously more about me, but I don't know if you have any thoughts, you know, when I share that.
Yeah, no, I think that first of all, it's a beautiful story. And that is exactly what flow state looks like. That what you just described is to me, you said you came from a personal development sort of retreat, did you say? And then you went into this experience. And so I'm sure in that space, you cleared a lot of those limiting beliefs, a lot of those sort of the patterns that we typically follow, those unconscious programs that we all typically live by, which really keeps us stuck in that limited way of being. And so I think it's beautiful that you just arrived as you are. And the one thing that comes to mind to ask is, you know, what's the difference, I guess, or where do you fit the universe and that misalignment, and the universe correcting you or the timing not being right versus us following our intuition? Because to me, spirit, it has no linear timeline. It's multidimensional. And so we may see a vision of something that we're meant to create 30 years from now. And we see it today as if it's supposed to be done for tomorrow, right? And I try to remind people, like, I'm a visionary, and I know this, but I think a lot of people, when their gifts come online and when they start to actually use those tools, it can be a little bit confusing for people, especially when it comes to time. So, and the other interesting part is, yeah, the way that time really, really works. And I think that'll take a whole other podcast on its own. So let's not go into time. But I do want to have a conversation around time and quantum physics and all the things as well. But yeah, that specifically, how do you discern, or how do you recommend to other people to discern between, you know, when is it the universe getting in your way because it's not meant to be, or maybe not meant to be right now? I think versus, because in coaching, you know, we talk about the resistance and overcoming the resistance. And on the other side of that, there's the gift, right? How do you discern between the two? And what do you usually remind people in the space to be able to kind of have that tool to be able to differentiate what is actually out of alignment versus what is actually the resistance that they're meant to kind of work through? And that's my question. Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, that's all good. It's a challenging question, a great question, right? As well. And the way I would say is that when you commit to something, and most people don't commit enough, right? So that's one thing. But, you know, true commitment, it's like, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do whatever it takes, realistically, not burning yourself out, right? But do whatever it takes to get to that vision, or whatever it is that I'm, want to create. That the universe tests you, right? The universe is always tests you once you commit. Just like if it's winter time and you commit to going to the gym, and then that next morning it's raining, windy, really bad weather, and you're in your warm bed and you're like, oh, maybe I'll just sleep in a little bit more. I'll go tomorrow. And then it's still bad weather. And then it's like a week later, right? So, the universe tests you, right? Like, are you going to go through and still do what you need to do? Because as much as it's great, being in that flow state, using your intuition, moving towards things, you still have to have some level of discipline and doing some things that may not be amazing all the time, right? You need to do fundamental things, right? In that there. So, just because if you don't like brushing your teeth, but you have to brush your teeth, otherwise you might be losing teeth, right? After, a period of time like that, right? It's like that in life or business. So you got to do these things. So understanding, are you committing enough? You will be tested. Now, so you've got to rise up to that occasion and going, okay, it's fine. Another belief that, is an awareness is life only gives me what I can handle. So when you're aware of that, going, okay, this is a challenge that's come up for me. This is going to allow me to push through or overcome whatever that I need to overcome, because I think we're all here to learn lessons, right, in this lifetime. And, as we're going there, so it's understanding, okay, what is this teaching me? What is this mirror? Something that I need to overcome for me. Now, this can be quite small, can be quite big, depending on the person and their unconscious patterns and their limiting beliefs, all of that. So it depends on the person. But I think you need to do it for a while, but also be open to getting help from someone externally, like a coach or mentor like yourself or myself, whether it's certain things in life, being, business, whatever, getting assistance. Because if you haven't got there, you could try and do it, but it could take you 10 years, right, to get there maybe. But if you've got someone that can get you into a level of being or strategies or mindset or whatever that will help you, they can reduce the time. And I think a lot of people try and do it themselves. Now, if you want to do it yourself, you could potentially can, but you've got to be a lot committed. It's probably going to take you a lot longer. And are you going to be able to endure that enough before you sort of flake out and go, oh, maybe it's just not for me, right? So I think that putting that thing out there to the universe. Now, there may be some roadblocks and other things that pop up for you. I think doing it for a certain amount of time is important as well. Like, I think you'd have to have multiple years at something before you can sort of say, maybe it's not for me, and trying it and getting help from people. And if it's still not working, then, maybe it needs to be a pivot, or maybe it needs to be something completely different. But if you just try something for a few months and then go, oh, it's too hard, it's not really enough time to build enough momentum and everything like that there. So that's my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours as well.
Yeah, yeah, I love that perspective. I think for me, the most important part, and I think the groundedness or that message that came to me that reminded me so clearly that it is coaching I'm meant to be doing is that, life happens for you. And sometimes we just need a little reminder of our greatness and just a different perspective. Because I think, not I think I know that we only know what we know, but we don't see ourselves from the outside. And unless we have a very regular practice, I guess, of, whether it's meditation, whether it's that practice of kind of, overseeing yourself and looking at your patterns and really being reflective and just being able to see and compare to other ways of being, which I really don't, we're not meant to be individuals. That's why we communicate. That's why we have all these different skills and tools and capacities to connect with other humans. We're not meant to do it on our own. So I mean, that in and of itself, I think just this individualistic Western mentality of, it's you versus me, or it's, this individualistic type of way of being is so unnatural for our nature. But we're all sort of kind of in this current state, forcing ourselves and being forced into it systematically and just individually as we go for that sort of the gold medal. There's only one trophy and it has to be mine. And I think just that perspective of society is so twisted, because I believe that there is no competition. I really do believe that there's only evolution. And like you said, life is a mirror. So I think a lot of our belief systems, they're the same. And I think because they're grounded in that spirituality, I just had a conversation with one of my good friends, and he jokes with me and he makes fun of me about saying like spirit tribe. You're my spirit tribe. Like we understand each other. We speak the same language, or, that person that will call you out of nowhere. And as you said, it's that resonance, that likeness of energy and attractive, attracting each other for that thought process. But, when one of your friends calls you out of nowhere and says, hey, how are you doing? Like, I was just concerned about you. And, no one else would know. You maybe have even emotionally bypassed that it's an issue. But they know, that to me, that's that spirit tribe. But we were joking, and I was saying, he was saying there's so much wisdom and knowledge locked inside, for example, the Vatican, that like no one has access to. And my thinking is, I have said so many things that people have related to a book they've read or wisdom that they know, or, hey, do you know this author? You sound just like them. And I'm like, no, I don't. I barely read. My ADD stops me from reading because I get so distracted and my mind goes to all these different places, downloading and thinking about things in a different way, that I very rarely actually sit down to read a book. But the collective consciousness, the vibrations that we have access to, it's raising so quickly right now that I don't think there's anything ancient wisdom or in writing that we don't have access to within ourselves when we actually are able to ground and access that truth. And to me, the frequency and the resonance of truth, when we reflect with one another, we get to this state of being able to see the world so much more holistically, because you have your experience from which you see the world. I have my experiences from which I see the world. And as we get together and as we reflect to one another, we all have such a multi-dimensional, so much more of a picture of what's really going on, and I think that's that sort of tribal way of being, that interconnectedness that is going to uplift and heal, where we don't have to question anymore. Like I have a son, he's 9 years old. So many times something will happen and he'll just say, no, that's not the way. It's like this. And I'm like, how do you know? And his answer from when he was little, when he was 4 or 5 years old, oh, God told me. I'm like, okay, that's really interesting. And they know, like they're so connected to the truth that as long as we don't unteach them, as you said, we're becoming more conscious parents. As long as we don't program them into these like self-rejection and denial and authoritarian way of just, you have to be quiet and listen because I said so. I think we are empowering them, but also I think we can learn so much from kids, because even we don't resonate at that frequency of truth that the next generation does, and the one after and the one after that. So that was a really long thought, and I think it went on some other tangent. But I trust it. I trust consciousness that streams through me. So yeah.
No, that's all good. And one little thing I'll add to that, right? And
Yeah.
is around environment and the people that are around you, right? I think this is so important, like you mentioned there. You talked about the family earlier, right? And I was lucky to move out. My previous company moved me from my city of Adelaide, which is very comfortable, sort of big country town city, to Sydney. And I got out of that comfortable environment. And a lot of my friends and cousins, they're doing the standard thing. They got the job, they got the house and the kids, and they're just sort of cruising. Now, that's okay for some people, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm not, but for me, where I'm wanting to do more and create more and be more, getting out of their environment. So is your environment of who you're around, whether it's family, friends, are they keeping you stuck? Are they keeping you comfortable right there? So being aware of that. And I've just drifted from a lot of people, right? I didn't cut people out necessarily, but I just stopped contacting them. And eventually you sort of, as you're growing, people are not growing, you sort of, the divide gets bigger in that area there anyway. So I'd rather be around people that are more like-minded, whether that's communities or spirit tribes, in your language that you're mentioning, right? That you're in these sort of groups where people are resonating at a similar level or have similar goals and are moving towards something, life, business, whatever, I think is important, so that you're not, being pulled down, more going, hey, keep going, you can do this. That type of mentality. Like even my parents don't even understand what I do really still now, right? They're teachers there. And you mentioned before about maybe that's a good segue into like a little bit about me just at the start. So I grew up in Adelaide, small capital city, big country town. My parents are high school teachers, both of them, right? So they sort of wanted me to do well at school and, all of that growing up. And I started selling VCD movies. These are, back a while in year 10, that's sort of in my journey, for $10 each. That's where that started. I was about 15, 16 years old. But then in my final year of school, I started not liking school the last sort of couple of years, and I dropped out of year 12 in my final year. My parents being high school teachers, you can imagine, right? And my dad told me I'd never be able to study because he had 3 degrees. And then one of my teachers told me you'll never be successful. Imagine that, right? Like a 17, 18-year-old, because I just flunked out, but I wasn't happy. And I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and do something that I don't want to do. Right now, that's not for everybody, but that's the choice that I felt was right for me at that time. And then ended up getting a job at a big environmental company, worked my way up, then moved me to Sydney, and then wanted to learn more about business. And everyone's talking about all these degrees and things, and I had nothing. I just worked my way up, and worked that I could be doing an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration, here at one of the top universities in Sydney, based on just having over 8 years of work experience. And I was working for 8.5 years at that point. So I thought, well, cool, I can get in and sort of skip school, skip the bachelor degree and just go straight to the Master's. And it was tough for me to study. Like, I don't know about yourself, but like I used to do whole semester assignments in one night. I wasn't built to sort of study normally, like the standard way. And I think this is with kids, and I understand that everyone's a little bit different, that's different, and not trying to force kids down a particular way. And then, so basically from there, I then went to do the MBA. I had an intention, still got through it. And then I started my first business. I did most of the core subjects, left after 10.5 years, started my first business, which is a waste management consulting business, waste and recycling. So I took all my knowledge, started helping biggest brands in Australia. I know in the US, you've got them like Westfield shopping centers, save them millions of dollars a year. Kmart and Target department stores are also over there, save them millions. Worked a lot of other brands, defense and that. And then, from there, I used to go to networking events and people would just ask me questions about, go, Athin, I've got these problems in my business. What do you think? I'm like, why don't you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And they're like, it's really good. Can you tell me that again? I need to write that down. And this happened multiple times. So this is when you're talking about your gifts, right? And being aware of what you're good at. And I'm like, okay, I'm really good at this. I've got a very good strategic brain memory. What I've learned from my MBA, from my coaches and mentors, from my experience, this is what I need to be doing. So I created my, business coaching, mentoring, speaking business from there towards the end of COVID. Then COVID happened, so I did a lot of stuff online, and then started my podcast as well, a few months into COVID, just over 4 years ago now. And, every week I've been posting 200 episodes on that and interviewed a lot of big names. there, which has been really cool. And then just, yeah, helping people all over the world, virtually as well as in person, events, a lot of different industries, like 30 plus industries, 10 plus countries that I've helped there, and really, yeah, tailoring things and giving people what they need to get to that next level. And even though I'm going from a business sense, it's sort of, yeah, obviously mindset's part of that, but it leaks into life, right? Because the way I see business is that it's a vehicle for life. It should be creating the life, that you desire in that way there. So that's sort of the very quick, version of my story. And my dad was finally proud of me when I finished my MBA, not my business success or anything like that from his, funnily enough, right?
The paper, you got the paper on the wall frame.
I know.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, interesting journey, and, keep moving forward, right. And helping people, and love doing that as well. And looking at some other cool things too. I think that's, yeah, finding that area there and trusting, what to do, and then having a good crack at it and getting people to help you along the way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey. I don't know if you have another meeting. I know it's a different time for you, and the day is, I believe, just starting, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's sort of later morning for me now. I'm all good for a little while. It's 10:30 a.m. for me now, the
Okay.
next day in the future.
That's right. You're ahead of time. You're ahead of us.
Yes, that's it. So you can go for a little longer, however long you want. And yeah, let me know. Happy to.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you sharing your journey. I think what I heard about when you shared sort of that, fast paced, fast forward the way that you got here, was first, not fitting yourself inside a box, actually being curious to go out, but also interacting with other people and really just being, and that's what I try to support people to embrace, is that, just go out and do something that you're passionate about. Go out and, like you said, network. People force themselves even to networking events. And to me, it's really important to go when your intuition guides you, when it feels good, when you're excited and it feels expansive, rather than, oh, I'm going to another networking event. It's like your spirit already knows if you're going to meet somebody that's in resonance. And if you have a resistance, and if it's raining, and if it's like all the other things, like we were talking about earlier, the difference between knowing that it's, a growth edge resistance versus knowing that it's sort of the universe getting in the way because it's not aligned, really being able to ground in that trust, and that just when we are in our being, we get to experience our gifts, we get to shine, and just the world reflects that to us. And I hear that was really part of your journey. And then the other piece is, I think our families, as much as we want to resist what they have for us and sort of those growth edges that they push us into, I think sometimes we want to fight back. But at the end of the day, if life truly does happen for us, which I believe it does, even those people that are here to trigger us to, to want to get away from, to want to grow, even their intention for us is still good, because I'm sure that masters of business admin and like all the different things that we do, even just to receive that sort of like, good girl, nice boy, like pat on the back from them, it still serves us and it still serves our purpose. And so it's sort of that yes and mentality that, once we start to see life in that different light, that everything happens for us, even the frustrated things, they still happen kind of for us. And so yeah, I just think it's important to remember that, as my son is talking with his friend, like, my mom's on a podcast. But yeah, no, I really, really appreciate you coming on the podcast, sharing your gifts. And yeah, maybe next time we can dive into the quantum physics of time and and what that looks like for you, explained in human terms, because yeah, I think it's another thing that we trick ourselves with. So
yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Relitza. It's been a pleasure being on here as well. Hopefully, a lot of people got a lot of value, and yeah, and you shared a lot of awesome stuff too, right? And I think it's a testament to the authenticity side of what your podcast is all about. You never know sort of where it's going to go, and and you probably learn a lot from myself or other people, yourself as well, on here, that probably people wouldn't know normally.
right.
When you start to dig deeper on those conversations, I think that there's a lot of gold there, because you have that perception on the outside, but what's actually deeper on the inside, and if that gives you some inspiration or some specific strategies, whatever that is, that's what it's all about, right? Serving others. So yeah, it's been a pleasure, and yeah, happy to help and go a bit deeper on another time, talking about compressing time or doing all these other cool things. But we'll leave the head blowing time for a part 2 at some point in the future.
I love that. Athin, can you tell us how people can get in touch with you in case they heard, what you had to share and they want to know more, they want to book a call with you just to find out more about how you can support them in their business?
Yeah, definitely. So easy way is my website, which is athincassiotis.com. So ATHINCASSIOTIS.com. You can see a lot about what I do there, but also on social media. There's only one of me online. You search me, so it's easy to find. I'm not a John Smith or anything like that. So you find me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, Instagram are the main ones that are there. Definitely connect with me. I always love having a chat with people, and putting out a lot of free content. You can see all my podcasts and all that other areas there of what it's about. And yeah, always happy to have a chat with someone. I think on my LinkedIn, I've got in the about section just a little link to have a 15-minute call with me. So if you just want to have a chat and I can help you to grow or give you some insights there, happy to do that. I always love giving back, and to anybody else. And feel free to mention that you've been on this podcast as well, this episode with Ralitza. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Ralitza. And yeah, look forward to continue to serve, and you keep doing your thing as well. Amazing stuff as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Athin. Have a wonderful day. All
Thanks.
right.
Same to you. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it is the sun setting. It's have a wonderful and take care.